Hey everybody, it's me, I'm Kentario, back again with Christ and comic books. Hey, if y'all would, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, show your support for the channel, as well as leave your comments. I really would love the feedback. I'm really a big fan of commentary, as in, having a conversation, debating things through, and coming up with newer ideas from those conversations. So I really look forward to seeing some of your comments. And that's also why, in this video, some of that's involved. I'm not saying another person, but what we're going to be talking about required me to talk to some people and get their feedback on what they think. So let me go ahead and tell you, spoiler alert, okay? Spoiler alert. We're talking about My Hero Academia, episode 74, season number 4. Crazy, amazing episode. For those of you that's seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those of you that have not and are still wanting to watch this, take a listen. Hopefully I can speak to it and really bring some honesty and truth to what was inside that episode. I mean, I'm telling you, this episode was amazing. So, to go ahead and start off, I'm going to summarize what happens in this episode. So, of course, they're invading the Hasakai home to try and find young Eri, who is being experimented on by Chisaki to try and create a serum, I guess you could say, that will completely eliminate the character's quirks. And if you don't watch My Hero Academia, I'm sorry, but this is going to be very simplified as to not speak to the entire story. Maybe one day I'll do a video on actual My Hero Academia, that way people can be on the same page. But for this video, I'm not going to. So, in this, they're invading the home. Of course, the main character, Midoriya Izuku, is also involved, otherwise known as Deku. And then you have Togata Mirio, and his hero name is Lemillion. He is also involved in this story, of course, with several other pro heroes that are here as well. And in this case, we have Lemillion, who's gotten ahead of everybody, being that he knows how to, he can permeate, I believe the term is. In other words, just phase through walls. As long as he controls his breathing, he can phase through walls. He can control what parts of his body phases and what other parts don't. He has a very well-established control over that ability. So he's going to try and chase down Chisaki to get to Eri. And he ends up getting close to where he is. He's facing off against him, challenging him. And then he ends up fighting his way through to get to Chisaki. First, he has to fight through 2 of the henchmen, one of which causes him to not only tell the truth about what his abilities are, but causes him to experience that the feeling and the emotion, even I guess you could say a level of anxiety about, having to have turned away Eri in the first place when they had first noticed her, and they had a hunch of what was actually happening. They actually had to let her go back into the hands of Chisaki at the time, just to make sure that they could report back to Night Eye and the other heroes about what they had witnessed, and what they suspected would really be happening, which opened up to revealing what's really taking place, so that they can put forth the plan to do what they're doing now, which is invading the Hasakai home. So Lemillion, however, although he was dealing with what truth he had to, experience in that moment, he was also, feeling woozy because another character is able to throw you off balance. That's his quirk as well. So he's having to, wrestle with his own mind, wrestle with his own body to be able to fight through these people, to be able to get to where Chisaki is to save Eri. Just to give a little bit of flashback, what happened in that instance that impacted Lemillion as well as Deku, because both of those characters wanted to be able to save that little girl in that moment. By the way, Eri is, yes, a little girl, like I said, who's being experimented on, and they saw the bandages on her. When Eri was trying to run away, she fell into Deku's arms. And so as she was sitting in Deku's arms, Deku could feel the fear. But Lemillion had to tell him, look, we can't act on this. We can't act as though we know who he is. We can't act as though we suspect what's happening, because of what the pro heroes' expectations were set. They said, just do recon. We don't want you revealing that we're actually watching them. Just do observation. So they could not act on catching him. And that hurt Lemillion, that he couldn't act on his willingness to save that little girl. But that's why now he's going in hard. And as he was about to get attacked, he goes in with his move called the Phantom Threat. If you say it in Japanese, they just say Phantom Menace. He goes zooming through the walls, boom, he knocks out the guy, making him, speak truth. Then he knocks out the other dude, just like two quick hits, bang, bang, done. And he's chasing after Chisaki right after that. Knocks out the dude working with Chisaki, chases him down, gets Eerie out of his pants by punching him in the face, kicking the other guy, taking the little girl, and then he has her covered. Now Eerie is in the arms of a hero. I'm genuinely experiencing a sense of salvation in this moment, which is so impactful to see that he's not letting what he had to do prior be what hinders him from being able to do the right thing now. So he has Eerie's in his arms. So Chisaki demonstrates the higher level of what his powers are, and to give a bit of clarity to that, Chisaki can touch something and cause it to dissipate, fall apart, I guess you could say just break apart easily, instantly from touch, and reassemble it how he would like. So he begins to touch the ground and cause it to fall apart, and then reassemble it in the form of spikes rising up from the ground trying to attack Lemillion. But because Lemillion's ability to phase through things is limited to him only, he's having to control by being able to hold the little girl up in the air, as well as jump high enough to where the only thing that's being hit is the spikes phasing through his body, but making sure the little girl is secure. And Lemillion is kind of thrown off by this assault because in this moment he's interpreting that as, why are you trying to kill your own daughter? And then it comes to the realization that that's just a lie that we told you. She's not really my daughter. We don't care what happens to her. If you give her to us now, I could kill her. But if I kill her, then you're gonna have to let me save her, because I'm the only one that can. So he's putting Lemillion in this very awkward situation, again, of wrestling within himself, of the, I guess you could say, the evil intent and thought process of another human being, because of how goal-oriented they are. Now, in looking at this kind of reflects into the Hasakai mindset, because it is a mobster family. As villainous as they're behaving, they're not necessarily villains per se, they're a mobster family. Chisaki is an adopted son from this mobster family. The head father didn't want to do these things that Chisaki himself is doing. So Chisaki went against the head of the household, somehow making him sick. That part hasn't quite been revealed yet. But the head of the Hasakai family is currently sick, leaving Chisaki in charge, and Chisaki is doing all of these, I guess you could say, aggressive and vile things on the underground to try and build up the family name, make them an empire once again. I guess you could say because of his disgust with other people, with human beings in general. Not to get too much into his character, but that's really the perspective when it comes to Chisaki. So Chisaki's trying to attack Lemillion, attack the girl, take the girl back, and you just see this grave back and forth between Lemillion and Chisaki. And in this instance particularly, so Lemillion's about to be shot at by what appears to be and comes off as a regular gun, a regular pistol. So as he's getting shot at, he protects Eerie, makes sure she's covered, uses his swiftness, because with the phasing ability, it's allowed for him to be rather swift. That comes partly from his, natural physical training, but as well as how well he's adapted himself to his power. So he's phasing instantly, going in the face of the guy with the gun, knocks him out. He ends up getting quite a few good hits in on Chisaki in the midst of this fight. So as he's beating down on Chisaki in this moment, he gets another good hit in on Chisaki. In the midst of that, Chisaki ends up throwing the cartridge for the 5 bullets that he's perfected. He ends up throwing them to one of his other minions, the guy that makes you speak truth, so he could use that bullet to shoot. So he gives the bullet to him. He's aiming, getting prepared to fire the gun. He was first aiming at Lemillion, but instead he aims it at Eerie. So when Eerie ends up getting shot at, Lemillion makes I guess you could say it's an unconscious decision. We'll get back into that, but he makes a decision to jump at the little girl. He covers her. Oh, it's such a beautiful scene, because he covers her as he's about to be shot. She's looking up because she knows she's about to be shot at, but as she's looking up, she's looking at Lemillion, smiling at her, embracing the genuineness of how much he wants her to see him as a hero. And not only that, he wants her to know that everything's going to be okay, that he's going to protect her and take care of her. He didn't want to see her. He didn't want her to see him in pain. He didn't want her to see him, hurting or frustrated or angry. So he made sure that the face that she saw in that moment was him smiling. But he gets hit by the bullet. In that moment, you see it surging through his body. His powers are gone. So now he's normal. But instead of him just, suffering with the thought of, what am I going to do now that I don't have any powers? Which is a very trademark thing to do when you read certain manga, when you see certain anime. What he does instead is as Chisaki's going to touch the ground and cause, of course, those spikes to rise up. You see a body getting thrown at Chisaki, and then you see Lemillion going in. Boom! He hits him in his arm. He's trying to block it. He's hurting. He goes to try and touch Lemillion. Lemillion dodges, midair weave. Boom! Hits him again. So then oh my goodness, such a hard thing you see. You see it frame for frame kind of scene of him going back to protect Eri, moving her out the way, covering her, and then you see him shifting back to trying to attack Chisaki, jumping back to protect Eri, jumping forward to attack the enemy, and while still trying to protect this girl. And now you see him start to get injured. And in the midst of all that's happening, you get a flashback of, he experienced being saved by someone when he was a kid. He had the urgency to want to become a hero. He's get the wisdom from his father. Hey, you have to learn to control this, or you could get killed. He gives him that reality, but he never loses that momentum of, I'm going to become a great hero. You witness some of the scenes of him training, trying to learn how to control his power. And then you see him raising his fist, and in Japanese they say "Kambare," and he said I think it's meaning I'm going to be great. I have to remember what that meant, but it's so deep because you hear him in his child voice saying that. And then the scene ends with a spike going into his right side and a spike going into his leg. He's gripping one of the spikes as if he caught it just before he could do major damage. But he's shoved the little girl out the way. He's taking this hit, and he's standing before her, protecting her. But now he's actually gravely injured. And the episode ends with him being gravely injured. And this episode was so good. I highly recommend that you guys watch it. And here's what's so important about it is that commitment to the heroism that you see in that scene. You see him pushing to protect this little girl. You see him pushing to be the hero that she needs in that moment. In several instances, she's reflected as, I'd rather suffer than see someone else suffer. You see that illustration regularly. And even more so, we make that decision ourselves in a lot of cases. Like, I'd rather just suffer with my own pain than, let somebody in. Let somebody come save me. Let somebody speak to me about what I'm going through. Let somebody give me advice. We reject that a lot of times. In some relationships, that's one of the hindrances is practicing silence over communication. When you're practicing silence over communication, then you hinder that ability for both of you to grow, but two, you continue to just suffer within yourself. And I've been there. I know what that feels like, and it's not a great place to be. But that's what Eri was doing, just suffering within herself. She didn't want to open up. She didn't want to let anybody in. She didn't want anyone to become her hero because she thought the worst thing that could happen is if they got hurt just for her. But, that's what's so great about that. What took place there was, Lemillion getting hurt for her. Lemillion putting his body on the line. Lemillion putting his gifting on the line. Putting his power on the line. Because it was more about her life than it was about saving himself. More than it was about protecting himself. I want to sidebar real quick, actually, because I had a friend ask me this question that I think is important when we're looking at heroism versus, whether you're doing the right thing, what's the wise decision or not. So the question that came up was, why didn't Lemillion just dodge the bullet? Like, protect her and then dodge the bullet? Or, like, push her down and then let it phase through? Why did he sacrifice himself? So, a couple of things to play into that, as you heard me earlier, I mentioned how there was a regular gun being shot at him, and then they switched to it being these bullets. And granted, he's very aware, one, of the situation. Two, they already talked through that they were making a weapon that could do this type of thing, because one of his fellow heroes of his same class, Sun Eater, he was hit with one of those bullets, but only for temporary loss of power. So he already knew what they were making, so why would he put himself on the line in that instance? I think it speaks to two things, one of which they kind of illustrated as if he struggled to get to her, but they also illustrated it from another perspective of the adolescence in his heroism. Because what we have to keep in mind with this series is that these are young people going into the position of being a hero. So he was already put in his mind the risk that he was taking by stepping into being a hero, what he would be putting on the line, his life. His dad already instilled that in him when his dad was even telling him if you got to be careful and learn how to control this power, or you could, end up dying. But the main thing he wanted to learn to control it for was to make sure people were saved, not to make sure that he was maintaining his coolness. He wasn't trying to look like the cool guy. He wasn't trying to look like the best. He wanted to make sure that he was saving people. So I think it really plays into his adolescence above everything else. because the pro heroes were concerned with having younger heroes coming with them to do such a life-threatening mission. So it was very serious to illustrate that there's still some level of childish ignorance that plays to them. They're not always going to make the wisest decisions. They're not always going to think everything through. So that's kind of what happened with Lemillion in that moment. But another thing that I think is important to speak to about Lemillion, two more points and we'll end this video. One point is, he called himself Lemillion because he wants to save 1 million people. But in this instance, we witnessed where he was actually only able to save 1. I thought that was so deep to see that. But that can speak in the spiritual sense, because they say that he had the parable of the shepherd and his sheep. He had over 100 sheep, but he left all of those sheep safe at home to go into the dangerous wilderness to save the one sheep that left the farm, that got lost, that almost died. He went out to go save that sheep and bring him back home where it was safe, secure, and comfortable. He put his life on the line for the sheep that got stuck and lost. And so that's what Erie was. Erie, although she didn't put herself in this situation, Erie was someone who was lost, who had nothing, who didn't think she was worth saving, but someone came and saved her and put himself on the line, because even if it's just one, that one is worth 1 million. Oh, that's deep. That one is worth 1 million. So if you ever think that of yourself, your worth, your value, I know I already did a video of being unworthy, but your worth and your value, it's worth 1 million. You're worth that much, and that's what the perfect sacrifice of Jesus means, is that he's able to be the sacrifice that can ensure that you're safe, to ensure that you're protected, to ensure that you're loved, to ensure that you know that there is somebody there that is there for you and they mean it. They're not there for any credit from you. They're not there to mooch off of you. They're not here to put you in debt. They're there for you because they love you and because they care about you, because you mean something to them. And you don't deserve, you're not going to be permitted to be allowed to suffer. But the last point that I kind of want to make with that, is of course that salvation that comes from that is, that's what heroes try to do, is they put themselves on the line to make sure that you're covered. It's one thing to do it because it's your job. It's another thing to do it because you care. It's another thing to do it because it's your heart. It's another thing to do it because you make it your life. And that's what Lemillion did. He demonstrated what makes him such a great hero. And as gruesome and as hard as it was to watch, that they ended it with another combat with his fist up in the air, showing that he's going forward, he's not giving up, and he's running towards the light. Beautiful episode. I highly recommend you guys check out My Hero Academia. It's a great storyline on heroism. Thank you guys, and y'all have a blessed evening.